I'll be starting my speech in two, three, two, one. Yes, we concede the fact that leadership is good. But what's the point of having leadership when you have no accountability towards other people who are also running on the same social movement as you are running on? We say that this is why social movement nowadays are not as impactful as how it is back then. Because back then you don't have that much leadership in social movement, and you can see the major impact that it brings, which is why in today's current world, we say leadership still does not lead to effective social movement. Before I move on, few things I'll be doing in my speech today, which is giving off a few rebuttals from the problematic ideas given by leader of opposition, and then giving off a few arguments coming from our side of the house, and finally comparing between both cases and tell you why we still win over opening opposition. So moving on to the rebuttals, right? The first rebuttal is how they say the leaders have the power for systematic movements. This is a truly an assertion towards leaderships when we talk about social movement, because it is not the same as your usual leaderships, because these social movements leadership, they are different compared to your usual organization leadership. These leaders don't exactly have enough resources and education to be the actual leaders of the social movement in the first place. That's how we see it in the current status quo. Second rebuttal is how they say the multiple mind create multiple agreements and eventually lead into conflicts. We say, right, why would these people care what others advocate as long as they can actually be harmful to what they advocate for? This is something I'll clarify a lot longer in my argument. Third rebuttal is they are responding to our POI, where they said that the leadership is basically going will be able to control these mobs. We say, what are the major impacts of you having leaders controlling these mobs in the first place? This is something that they didn't clarify. Even if so, when you have controlled mobs, they would probably be forced to advocate what the leader wants, conceding the ability for them to be harmful on what they advocate for in their social movement. Now, that is clear on rebuttals. Moving on to my arguments. First argument, right, under the tagline how there's power in balance inside. How does this argument look like? It looks like when you have a leader, sometimes the individual itself would have a different perspective or different things compared to the thousands of people that you're leading upon. I'll give you an example, right? On the feminism social movement, where you have this leader who advocates on cupcake feminism. This is obviously, you must understand, this is obviously what most feminism does not really want in the world we live in nowadays, because they want the ability to compete with men in the context of social feminism movement nowadays. We say that when you tell these people that, oh, I advocate for this, thus you must advocate for what I advocate, it causes internal conflicts in the social movement itself, which leads to loss of focus and fragmentation due to the fact that people have different goals, and they have ultimately they are forced to focus on a goal that they are not even set to themselves in the first place. The impacts of these arguments, we tell you that you have social movements that are hard to be able to promote. You have social movements where you are unable to promote what you advocate on, because you have these power imbalances with the leader telling you that you must follow what I advocate on, and we completely disagree on what you advocate on. That is a scenario that you get under side government right now. On our side, this is much better, because when a social movement is done leaderless, you can have everyone felt like they have full power on what they advocate on, and can do it without the intervention of a big head that is these leaders in the first place. Sure, in social movement you have people advocating on different things, but eventually you are surely going to be unbothered uh, with how other people promote their advocacy, due to the fact that you already have the ability to also promote your own advocacy, because you have no leaders to concede your advocacy in the first place. On their side of the house, we tell you that you'll definitely have people who felt like they can't really show their empowerment in the social movement, because you have these big heads who feel like they're in control on what their advocates must spread the word on. Now, before moving on to my second argument, any POIs? Three, two, one. I believe that our first argument is strong enough. Now, second argument, under the tagline, the lack of peace that a leader might bring. Because in the world that we live in nowadays, leaders of this social movement, they conduct this social movement in a more aggressive way, and in a more violent way, because they apparently want immediate reaction taken by the government. I'll give you a simple example, right? The BLM movement in 2020, where it consists of riots and protests. With all of these white noises, another problem the society must deal with their potentially losing their belongings, or the shop owners losing their shops because of destruction from these riots, right? This is all done because their leader at that time tells them to say, because it will apparently work. Because you must understand, BLM, they have a lot of founders, right? And when you have a lot of leaders, they have different perspective. They cannot be in this one set mindset, and this is what happens. You have that 2020 riot recreated, right? Now, the impacts of this argument. Social movements done by these white noises, right, would have little to no effect in changing the world with what they're advocating on, because the governments will be measuring down more on the damages done, on the damages caused by these social movements. Sure, we concede to the fact that the change can happen, but we tell you what changes are there in the racism happening in US. We tell you it is very, very minimal when you go to all of these protests, when you go to all of these riots, right? Because you are not creating social movements well for the policy changes. Now, second impact is neutral people will also find it hard to buy into their social movement because of the harms that are caused while spreading the word. Now, we tell you that on the outside, sometimes people will sometimes people, when they're leaderless, they would have the fear to do the social movement, to do violent social movement in the first place, because first they don't want to risk their lives just for the sake of government to change their policy. Side opposition must deny this fact. They need to tell us that even without a leader, these people will still conduct violent movements. To which we tell you that this is very, very marginal when you don't have a leader who is crazy enough to do so. Side out, meanwhile, would have leader with crazy mentality to tell their people to actually cause violence in the social movement. Now, moving on to comparison between two cases, we tell you that the problem coming from side opposition, they have no solution to matrix. Contrary to outside, where we tell you a lot of solution, we tell you a lot of solution to our matrix. Now, second of all, they make a lot of assumptions under their side of the house. I'll give you an example, like how can a leader sustain balance in social movement? This is something that they never clarify on, and this is something that I tell you to never credit them on, because it is just an assertion and they make no analysis on how is this going to happen. Third of all, they never touch upon our case, just like how we touch upon their case through this speech. They only tell you their benefits without under their side of the house, without significantly bringing down our case, which is why their side is more weaker compared to our side. With all those reasons, never been proud to propose.